Hello, and welcome to my living room. This is episode 31 of the Live and Learn Knitting Podcast. My name is Anne, or Annie, and I'm coming to you from the banks of the Mississippi River in western Wisconsin. Today is Friday the 13th, December 13th, 2024. And I have already done Friday the 13th episode. Episode 4 was done on Friday the 13th. I think it was October of last year. It was the crochet episode, which was not very popular, and I don't know, maybe it was Friday the 13th and not the crochet content. Who knows? But we'll see what happens today. I'm not overly superstitious, but I'm aware of these things. So yes, I'm not going to tempt fate, I think. I'm going to, just be mindful of the day. So I'm a little not disoriented. I've started out doing these podcasts in the living room, but then I moved to the dining room. It's a much more organized space as far as I have a table and that. Everything's down here on the coffee table today, and I just wanted to be here next to the Yuletide tree, and because it's a seasonal thing, so it's not going to be here forever. So just a little special festive addition to the podcast. Last year I did an episode in front of the tree, talked about all the ornaments and things that I like to make. I didn't make any new ones. I might have made a few after, during the holidays last year, but not anything specific that I can recall. So I think that's what I'm going to do the next few days. I only have 2 ornaments on the tree right now, a stocking and a mitten that I got from my friend Beth on Wednesday. And I think I'll put up decorations later today, and maybe I'm in the mood to make a few more. So that'll be my upcoming activity. So I'm sorry if I look down at my notes, but yeah, everything's a little bit discombobulated this morning. Par for the course for today, right? Okay. So I'll start by saying thank you to everyone who watches and subscribes and likes the podcast. I really appreciate that. It's fun to hear from you and create these episodes for you. I still enjoy doing it, so I hope you like watching. So if you do, please like and subscribe and all of the good things. And where to find me, it's livelearnknit@gmail.com is the email. There's also a blog at livelearnknit.blogspot.com. There is a Ravelry group, which I'm sorry I haven't checked this week because I've been a bit busy. Thank you for those who have joined that group so far. You're all welcome to participate in that. And there are a few chat threads. There should be more coming. We'll see how that goes. That's a new thing. And that's Live, Learn, Knit group on Ravelry. And what else? Oh, Annie P. Knits on Instagram. There. All of the communication channels done. Okay. Also, what I'm having today, tea, is yogi tea, vanilla spice, and the tag, my friend Helen and I are keeping a shared database of the affirmations on those tags, and it did repeat again today. Helen, what's up? So the tag was this is vanilla spice. The clock's gonna chime. It's the quarter hour. Vanilla spice, perfect energy, which I really, it's a good one for today. It's very cold here. It might be above 0 now, but it's only going to be in the teens today. So the affirmation was, those who bring happiness to others find it. And I thought, gosh, that sounds familiar. And when I went to add it to the database, yeah, it was that same flavor even of tea, same tag. So but still a good affirmation to carry with us today. And I probably had it on a past podcast even. But this mug, look at this mug. It's a new acquisition that I got down at the local coffee shop. And isn't it, for one thing, this is what caught my eye. That's beautiful. But then look at those colors. It's sort of like mountains. It's sort of like trees. It's sort of like the Northern Lights, all rolled into one beautiful glaze there. So I got this down at the local coffee shop, the station, and last Sunday, and I really enjoy it. I've been using this all week. Yeah, and it's actually one of those mugs you can hold on to and it warms your hands. So it's cozy. It's cozy. So that's the tea, that's the mug. Oh, Turtle Hollow Pottery in Pennsylvania. Yeah, so, and they have a website. I'll link to that in the show notes. But just a lovely, lovely mug. And that ties into the bit of living, one of the bits of living, I think the only one I'll share today. Last Sunday, December 8th, was Harikuyo. I always say it wrong. I just have to say it twice. Harikuyo, which is the Japanese Buddhist ceremony to honor the needles. So we have done this a couple times with our my outdoor knitting group. So this past Sunday, we went down to the coffee shop, the station, because on her patio, she has a little fire pit. And the ceremony, I had a bunch of small wooden needles that had snapped because, they're just as big as toothpicks, basically, those number 0 wooden needles. And I had been saving them. So we tied yarn on them in the colors of the Buddhist prayer flags, red, green, yellow, white, blue. And we also had some bent pins and rusty sewing needles, that kind of thing. We made a fire. I had some other symbols that could go in the fire, like I brought pine cones because, the pine cones are the design element, the Fibonacci sequence, and they're so beautiful. And acorns symbolized strength and unity and community, and that was nice. Peg brought dark chocolate to throw in the fire, not to eat. That was a sacrifice, let me tell you, because it was good chocolate. Small pieces, small sacrifice. And some matcha powder that we put on as well. And so we, just, and we wrote, this is another thing that kind of came from a different place, but I thought it was appropriate. We had bay leaves, and we wrote intentions on the bay leaves, and it was our choice, put them in the fire or take them along with. So I did one of each, put one, wrote an intention, put it in the fire, and then I also brought one home with me. So after that, we had coffee. And we sat outside. It was a warm enough day where we could sit outside for a bit, and I knit, and we visited, and it was a lovely Sunday morning. So that was the bit of living, knitting related living for the week, and it was a good one. Good to have those winter type. It's not a winter activity, but it happens in the winter. And actually, the festival, the Harikuyo festival or ceremony, can happen twice during the year. December 8th, or I believe it's March 8th. And it just depends on what province in Japan you align with. And as we are not in Japan or Japanese, we get to do both, actually. Our choice. We get to do it both times. So we'll do it again in the spring, which will be kind of fun. It'll be like a reawakening type ceremony maybe. So I'll link to the Wikipedia page for Harikuyo so you can read more about it. And I might have done that in the past. You know, I've been doing these episodes for more than a year now, so I apologize if things get repeated. It's not my intention, but just, you know, this is a tradition that does come around and around and around. So that's going to happen a little bit. But not to the extent of you could just turn on a previous episode and hear the whole same thing. Hopefully. So, okay, so that's tea, that's living. Now I'm going to take a sip before I put that down. Now, what I'm wearing is not a hand knit sweater at all. No, no, no. I just have it on today because, for one thing, red and green, colors of the season. And I wasn't sure what else to wear because this is not the star of the show. This is the star of the show. So, I cannot wear the star of the show. So I brought this out of the cedar chest. I put it on. This is a Geiger sweater. Geiger from Austria. I got this at Salvation Army. And I think this was I want to say many years ago because they've been closed in the Winona area for a long time, that store. It morphed into something else, I believe. Anyway, it was a long time, and I thought at the time it was like $8 or $10, and a lot of the other sweaters or the other clothing there that day was, $1 or $2, and this was expensive, and I wasn't sure I was going to buy it, but I just loved it. I loved the design elements, and I'll kind of stand up, look at down the sleeve. It's definitely a machine knit fabric that is serged and sewn together, but look at those spirals. See, here, show you here. Spirals. That's spirals and circles are definitely significant to me. I really enjoy them and like to work with them whenever possible. So let's see, I'm not sure if I can stand up, but I'll just show you the back has got, a bit of decoration on it, and there's spirals over here. So it's basically, these motifs repeat, and I will stand up and just show you, look at that compass kind of a motif, and that's on the back somewhere as well. So I just couldn't resist all these beautiful geometric elements to this sweater, even though when I bought it, it didn't fit. And it doesn't fit now because I can't button it. I mean, tightly I can button it across my belly, yeah. But I don't remember what size I was when I bought this, but it didn't fit then. It doesn't fit now. It's getting, let's hope it's getting closer. There was a point where you just stop getting on a scale to find out how big you are. So I don't even know that I could put it on. It's got lovely buttons too. Look at those brass, they're shank button. Just pretty. So, very well made and warm. It's wool. So I couldn't let it just sit there on the rack. I had to bring it home with me because I appreciate it, even though I don't wear it, can't wear it. I'm getting there. I've put back some of the weight that I took off, so hopefully I will get back to that. And when I was at the lowest, it was summertime, so I didn't even try to put this sweater on in the summer. But it's a good, not temptation, what's the word? Motivator. Get back on track and keep going. And I did have a good supper last night. I made roasted carrots with maple and cranberries and feta and almonds. It was very good. I will link to that recipe in the show notes. It's not mine, but I'll put a link to it because it was really delicious, and I'll make it again. And I, of course, added some thinly sliced potatoes. I didn't have harissa seasonings or whatever that, I don't even know what that is, I'm sorry. But I just put in, some of my own seasonings. The base idea was there, and it was delicious. So, yeah, so good things to eat. that are healthy. Okay, enough about not actual knitting. Here we go. Yes, I'm ready. All right. Ta-da! This episode now is titled, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I would say, come here, come here, come here, come here. Well, this sweater is the Camira sweater. So the episode is, Camira, I want to tell you something. I want to tell you that I finished the Camira sweater. And again, I talked about this in a past episode not too long ago, this summer, because I was trying to get it was in July. Episode, oh boy, July is further back than you thought. Not the Advent one. Yes, the Advent one. Sorry. Episode 22. Anyway. So here it is. It's finished. At long last. That's the wrong side on the front there. At long last, the Camira sweater is finished. And I think I can get back far enough that it's very long. Lauren wanted it long. And if you remember, this is a commission for my cousin's daughter. My cousin asked me to knit her daughter a sweater, and I agreed. And I'm going to show you close up some of it. This is the texture pattern, which was just so much fun to work. It's very symmetrical. Even though it looks a bit asymmetrical, it's very symmetrical. So this sweater is by Carol Feller, and Carol is in Ireland, and she's genius. It's contiguous construction. Starts back here with this lovely panel and this bit of stockinette on each side of the texture. And you start and you do that. Then you stop. And depending on whether you're knitting the front or the back, or the left or the right, you might start with this little bit here on the bust and increase, join, pick up stitches, and you go back and forth till you come to the shoulder. Stop, cast on, join, pick up these stitches, back and forth till you get to the shoulder. Stop, stop again, pick up here at the base of this texture pattern that you're working. So you've got texture, 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 and you've got to remember where you're at on all three stitch patterns. So there was a lot of keeping track. So do that, then pick up here under this texture pattern, pick up here all the way around, and you pick up this where you started. You pick up the live stitches there, pick up around there, get around to the other side of the front, and then you're knitting back and forth down, and you've got a texture pattern on each side of the opening. And there's also this beautiful, look at that, faux seam slip stitch, faux seam going down the side. There's a tiny bit of increasing along the side edge just to accommodate women's hips, because women have hips. Even Lauren, who's very slender, there's hips. So yeah, and then you do the sleeves. You join in the round and do the sleeves, knit them downward, and the sleeves have the texture on the front and on the back. And the sleeve, I'm going to hug this mannequin, the sleeve shaping, instead of it being done on the underarm side, where most sleeve shaping is done, there's either a seam or a faux seam or the beginning of round. The sleeve shaping is all done on the top between these two texture motifs. So it just keeps getting narrower and narrower and narrower. And look down at the bottom. That's all I was left with, I thought. And Lauren wanted her sleeves long. She wanted them to come down like over her wrist, part way down her hand. And so I was running out of stitches big time. I kept decreasing. And the cuffs, yeah, knit 2 purl 2 rib cuffs. That's what the ribbing is all the way around. So she last tried this on. I had the neck ribbing done. I did not have the button bands on it yet. And I didn't have the sleeves finished off because I really did want to double check that measurement, because these sleeves are a mile long. So I really want to, is that what you want? A mile long sleeve? Yes. Yes. So, so it's finished, except as you can see, there are no buttons. Lauren was, I went through my stash and I found several buttons. And I took them with me. And I also took a little swatch that I made of 2 different size buttonholes. A yarn over knit 2 together buttonhole, and then I think I did like a 2-stitch 1-row buttonhole. Maybe. Something. I did kind of a made up buttonhole. I didn't even look it up. I just, you know, I just winged it, and I wasn't even sure what I did. But, I took those buttons along with me. Well, she didn't really like any of the choices that I had, and she hadn't gotten any buttons. So I gave her this little swatch of like, here, take this with you. Find some buttons that you like, and this, you know, you can see which hole they fit through, and let me know. And so I proceeded. I finished the sleeves, and then I worked on this button band, and then I was ready to do this one. I thought, I don't know what she did. So I got in touch with her. I said, what did you know? She hadn't found any buttons yet. She looked and she didn't see any she liked. And then she went, she had the flu or something. So, you know, she hadn't been out. Anyway, I got to the point. So I thought, well, I'll just make some buttons. And like I said, I couldn't remember what I did on her swatch. So I did a 1-row buttonhole, a 2-stitch 1-row buttonhole. And, you know, it was a new to me technique, so I was following the YouTube, and I was like, oh, back and forth and back, and it was a bit complicated. I finished it, and I did this, finished the band up to the cast off. I didn't cast off, and I thought, that buttonhole looks awfully small. And so she had told me by then, I think, that she had gotten buttons. And that was what her email said. Oh, I found buttons. And I thought, I didn't think at the time, what size did you get, Lauren? So I had emailed her, and I sat with this on the, you know, not cast off. And I thought, what size did you get? And she answered, and she said she got 1-inch buttons. Okay. So I went upstairs and I found some 1-inch buttons, and I brought them down, and they didn't fit. The holes were too small. So I ripped back. I had all the rest of these rows done. So I ripped back. Oh, and I had also ripped this the first button band back because I didn't follow my own advice. Here, if you can see, look how nice that looks. Well, it looks nice now, but the first time I knit this button band, I left a stitch off this. You know, I like to slip my edge stitches. So I was doing that, and it made this bottom and the top of this squish down. You know, it was like this whole first rib was non-existent. So it was pulling down, and I thought, well, that'll block out, and I thought, maybe not, because it doesn't look like there's enough stuff there. So my tip that I forgot to follow was to cast on pick up an extra stitch, because you're going to slip stitch that edge. So, and I just picked up, I can't remember how many the pattern said to pick up, but I just picked up, you know, what felt right, looked right for me. These were live stitches, or, well, not live stitches, but, you know, you could go stitch for stitch. And then this was a slip stitch edging along here to pick up from. So, it was working fine. It all lays great. And I actually think I was within 4 stitches of what Carol recommended in the pattern. So I was fine with that. But then I had to add those 2 extra stitches for the slip stitch, so I had to rip this band out and redo it. So then on the second one, on the button band, it was the same number of stitches, and I was doing the buttonholes. And what I did was I laid, to do this one, I laid this out, and I started up here, and I marked with those ring type markers, and where I would put buttons, and I put one there, and I put one at the bottom, and then I kind of counted. Oh, I didn't kind of count. I did count. I counted all of the knit, how many knit ribs are there, and divided that. Carol's pattern for this size suggested 8 buttonholes. So I was dividing that and spacing the ring markers accordingly. And then I could see where on this, I put them all, so then I had this much, up to that row, up to the buttonhole row done. So then I could mark them accordingly on here and know when I was getting to the point where I needed to do a buttonhole. That's what I did the first time. And then I had to take everythh back, rip out the buttonhole, which was tedious because I couldn't just rip. It was all, cast off, turn around, wrap stitch, cast on, all of that kind of stuff. So it was slow going to get that buttonhole row out. And then I went back and did a 3-stitch 1-row buttonhole. And I think in between waiting for Lauren and finishing, doing the 2-stitch one and that, and having doubts, and waiting, I looked at the pattern, and Carol Feller said her buttonhole suggestion was a 3-stitch 1-row buttonhole. And I thought, maybe if you read the patterns, you would and follow what the pattern says, you'd be better off. Because we got there in the end. We got to the same point in the end, but I just thought, oh, it's going to be some weird, complicated buttonhole that I won't want to do. No, it was fine. It was fine. So I got the buttonholes after and so I did find some 1-inch buttons. They fit through these buttonholes very nice. And I did watch a bunch of YouTubes to find a good tutorial for doing this buttonhole because I couldn't remember. It was, it's a lot of steps just for a 1-row buttonhole. And I will link to the video that I finally landed on that I liked. There are many out there, definitely. And actually, Andrea Mowry does have a good one. I didn't find hers at the day I needed, to do this. So I want to say it was something like Crazy Fox or Crazy Chicken or somebody, Dancing Fox, Laughing Chicken. I don't remember. It's an animal and a characteristic. But I will link to that in the show notes. It was, and I could stop it and back it up and, redo it as many times as I needed. I did finally get to the point, by the end of the button band, that I could do them. There were 8 of them, and I did it twice, 2-stitch and then 3-stitch. So I did get the hang of it by the end. After, the first 12 buttonholes. But, yeah. And the thing is, I'm not afraid. I probably for sure will forget. Unless I do a sweater right now today that has buttonholes on it. I won't remember that. It's not necessarily going to stay up here. But it's, if I link to it in my notes, then I'll know where to look for it next time, right? Yeah. Anyway. So it was all finished. I stayed up late Monday night. That's when I got the message from Lauren on what size buttons. And I had to work back. So it was after 1 a.m. when I finished, when I cast off, and actually the heat is on a timer, the thermostat's on a setting. So the heat shuts off at 10 o'clock, and I was sitting here on the sofa knitting and it was getting chillier and chillier, and I could have turned the heat back on, but I didn't even want to move. I just wanted to keep going. So by the time I finished it, I was frozen. And I went to bed and I was so cold. I had to put on 2 sweaters and a hat and warm up. It took a while to fall asleep. So Tuesday morning I got up, I took a pre-blocking photo, which is all scrunched together. You can see it, that'll be on the Ravelry page, which I'm going to update today. And yeah, I took a pre-blocking photo and then I washed it and laid it out to dry. And that was Tuesday. I did all the washing and blocking on Wednesday, yes. And so then yesterday it was finished, it dried. And actually it wasn't drying very well on the towel. I had to put it on the floor because the sleeves were so long. I didn't want them to hang off the coffee table or, and stretch out any further. So I had it laying on the floor on a towel, and it wasn't getting dry. So I took it down the basement and I put up my drying rack, and I put one of my window screens, which I've taken off the windows for winter. They're thin, metal framed screens. Laid that down, laid a towel over that, a thinnish towel, and then put the sweater on that, and it dried overnight. It was not necessarily warm in the basement or hot, it's an unfinished basement, but it had enough air circulation then underneath and on top that it dried overnight. So yeah, yesterday I took photos of it and on the mannequin, and it's actually, it was emotional for me because I started this, I told you before, this project started in 2018 actually, was when Elaine asked me if I would make it. And Lauren came over in March and we sat down and looked at patterns together, and she picked out this pattern, and then we went yarn shopping that day. We had a lovely, day together, lovely visit. And that was 2018. And I think all I did that first year was make a swatch. I had the pattern. I could have gotten started and gotten going, but no, I think all I did was make a swatch and then proceeded to ignore the sweater. Oh, how terrible. So I got some of it done. I was working on it, and I was doing other things, of course, other knitting projects and that. It wasn't like I wasn't doing anything, but I wasn't working on this project. So 2019? 2020. I got going on it, I guess. Yeah, a year later, 2019, I started it. Then another year later, I had Lauren do a fitting because I had, like this much of the body and a bit of a sleeve going down. And so I had her do a fitting, and that was March of 2020. It was like 3 days before we went into lockdown for COVID. So then I didn't work on it because it was COVID, and that kind of threw us all for a loop, and I was making masks and I was doing other things, and but I did have this urge to finish projects. Not this one, but other projects. So it sat. I worked on it a bit. It sat. And during the COVID times was when we found a lot of online groups, and I was in a couple different knitting Zoom groups. And this one, I was working on an old project, and they were kind of, I said, they were kind of nudging me on, well, have you finished that? I told them how old it was, and they were, wow, that's old. So they were helping me, prompting me, poking me to finish that project, and it helped, and I did. And so when I finished that, I said, okay, I need your help again, help me, keep after me to finish this. And that didn't work. I still procrastinated and worked on it, and then put it down and worked on it. And as I told you in July when I talked about this, I had lost, when I picked it up in February of this year, 2024, I'd lost all confidence in it. I had no idea. Put her down for a minute. Oh, she's fun to hug. This was my original printed out copy, and I do like to print a copy, especially when it's a complicated pattern. I don't want to say complicated, complex. It's not difficult, it's just complex. I did want to but look here's the pattern, and I didn't even circle any of my sizes. So when I picked it up after a long lapse, it's like, what size am I making? Nothing's circled on here. It was terrible. All my pages are coming apart. Here's a page with, here's some hash marks. What do they mean? I don't know, but that's kind of how I worked. Here's something that says 6 inches body down at the bottom. 6 inches that I had, 6 inches more to go. I don't know. Notes were terrible. Even the sleeve notes didn't match up. The sleeve hashtags did not match up. There was this. Who knows what that's all about? I don't know. There's question marks by it. So it was just a mess. I could not tell from my notes what I was doing. I counted stitches. The stitch counts did not match any of the sizes. So I was just perplexed. And I had Lauren's measurements. I had that. But yeah, I had lost confidence. And because the sweater sat on a chair, sat in a bag, sat, it was just kind of looking shabby. And I thought, oh, this is terrible. I cannot claim this as my work. It looks awful. And I had some yarn that I didn't start. We bought, originally that day, we bought 8 skeins of yarn. Didn't think it would take that many, but I think we had 1 or 2, 1 extra for sure. Okay. So, maybe 2 extra for her size. So there were a couple skeins that I hadn't started. And Malabrigo, there's no dye lot, so you kind of have to be careful. And this is sort of a kettle dyed all over color. You have to be careful. And we lined up the skeins, to make sure they were all cohesive, that there wasn't one that was way off of the coloring. But I know when I was knitting, there was a point where I started one of these pick up and go, and it did look like it wasn't quite matching. That was on the first sweater. And so we put that down towards later, and anyway, I had yarn I hadn't used. So I cast on the sweater again. And I printed out the pattern again, and I started circling my measurements, or my sizes that I needed. And instead of writing all my hashtags on the pattern, I believe I taught myself this tip last year at some point, just to try and be more organized. I stapled a whole bunch of blank pieces of notebook paper to the back of the printed pattern. And look, restart, January 15th, 2024. I put the needles size that I'm working with. the size I'm making, working size 3 on number 4 needles, because I wasn't even sure what needles say. There were needles in the project. But, yeah. The other thing I was worried about was when I was looking at the sweater, it just, to me, looked a little small. And I thought, that looks small. It does not look like it's going to fit. So I was just happier to restart it. And I did. And I wrote down row by row what I was doing, so that if I did set it down, I could pick it up and go, oh, okay, I'm on decrease row 7 of my shoulder shaping. Yeah, that's where I ended. And, have here, when I picked up around the front, I've got it marked what all there's selvage, then there's texture, then there's side stitches, back texture, side stitches, texture, side, so that I knew what was going on. And that helped immensely, because I did, okay, obviously, I started this again in January. It's December. It shouldn't have taken me 12 months to knit this sweater. It did. 6 years. 5 years and 12 months. So, yeah, I set it down to do other things, to and it's interesting. There's a point in a project where it either loses steam and you're tired of it, or you gain momentum because you're so close to finishing and it's starting to turn out and look really good. And I think maybe that's what happened with the first one, is that I lost steam because I wasn't sure. And I'm always apprehensive making something for someone else. Is it really going to fit properly, how they want it to fit? So there was that apprehension. But there was a point in this second version where I did feel like, okay, I've got this in hand now. It is turning out how I want it, how Lauren wants it. It's good. Go. And then it went a little bit better to the, faster to the end. So I think, and that turning point was July. Yeah, when they came and we did a fitting, and from then on, even though, July till now, still was a long time. Other things going on, but it's done, and I have sent her photos, sent her and her mom photos, and said, it's done. Let's get together and, pick it up. You can come and pick it up, or I'll hand it off to you. She is going to sew the buttons on, or if she comes this weekend to pick it up, I'll sew them on. If she brings them, one way or the other, we'll get the buttons on. I'd like to get some photos of her wearing it, and so either, I will do that however, and hopefully get pictures with buttons on. I'm going to give her some of the leftover scraps, because, in case she needs to repair anything at some point. Hopefully not, but, life happens. So I'm going to give her some scrap yarn. Maybe more than this. I said we bought 8 skeins of yarn. This took 587 grams for the sweater. So 6 skeins of yarn. So there should have been 2 left. And I have a generous swatch for my gauge swatch, and another swatch that I did, which was the texture pattern, testing that out. So then what I did, I showed you this an episode or 2 ago. I made a hat out of some of the leftovers, which I really like. And now I have very little left, but I do have small leftover balls. Here's one. I weighed them all because they're all a bit different size, and so I wanted to use them in a certain order for this project. So, I had like 7 or 8 about that size, some a bit bigger, some smaller. So I actually wrapped them in old envelopes and kind of wrapped them up like candy and put numbers on them so I could keep track of which one I want to use next. Because I'm making now this Empower People cowl, Casapinka pattern, which I've shown before, and I will link to this in the show notes. I thought this would be a good use of the rest of the leftovers, and it could be for Lauren or it could be for her mom. And I'm leaving my tails. See, I thought, so I'll start with the smallest ball that I have of leftover, because just working on the fewer stitches and increasing, the small ball will go farther. If I would do the small ball up here, I would run out of it sooner. So I wanted to start, and work my way up to the larger balls. Now, I said I'm leaving my tails. This is the neck edge of the cowl, and I'm leaving the tails hang down. And my thought was, I could, this has got some lints on it. I could, weave these in to the selvage edge. That's one way to do it. But my thinking is I'm going to twist these really, really, really tight and let them spring back on themselves and make sort of a tassel. And at the base of the and then knot it up here right at the base of the neck edge. But while I'm twisting, I want to put out probably a small wooden bead on the end of that. So there'll be a tassel hanging down with a bead on it. And that way I won't have to weave in any ends and worry that they're going to pop out. And it'll just be a little decorative element, kind of hanging off the neck edge of the cowl. We'll see. It's an idea. If it doesn't look right, I'll take it out and weave the ends in. But I think it'd be kind of cute. And, so far, those actually almost look kind of evenly spaced right now. That's not the plan, but we'll see how it goes. So, so I'm working on this now, and then I will be out of yarn. And, on to other projects. So it's been a long haul with the Camira. It's been, like I say, I got a bit emotional about it yesterday, and for thinking of all the things that have happened since I started, and I was telling someone about this, and they said, well, why would finishing a sweater, make you feel that way? And I said, because as makers, we put so much of ourselves into our projects. And as we're working on them, I'm thinking about Lauren, I'm thinking about Elaine, my cousin, I'm thinking about our family, our connection, my dad and her mom were brother and sister, so I'm thinking about the past, and now I'm gonna tear up all over again. You just think about that. Think about Lauren, and she had just finished college when I started this project. So, thinking about her going, starting her adult life. COVID happened. There was that. Thinking about the groups of people that I met, that had spurred me on to finish this sweater, that criticized me for not working on my sweater, that supported me in, and were very helpful in their nudges to get me to work on it. So there was that. Just remembering all that goes into it, and learning different techniques, how much I've changed in the last 6 years. Because that was when I started losing weight. So there was that, just different activities that I've been involved in since then. So it's a lot. There's a big retrospective in this sweater and in all the projects that we make. And that's the wonderful thing about making, is we don't just do it in a vacuum, devoid of any feelings. We definitely put our heart and soul into what we do. And I really have to stop. So yeah, and that's a good lesson for the holidays, I guess, or for any time really. So yeah, so this is Camira, and Camira, I want to tell you about it. So all the details will be in the show notes. I just have a few little things left to talk about. Okay, just two. All right. What I'm reading, what I'm watching, I'll talk about that first a bit. I've been watching, I've been knitting in that, trying to watch a few different Vlogmas episodes of knitters and that, and I don't get it. I just don't understand the concept of Vlogmas. I mean, I know what they're doing. They're, every day or every few days or once a week. Some of them are like doing it once a week, or every, wrapping a couple days into one. Some are doing every single day of Advent, and talking and opening either Advent calendars, knitting Advents or chocolate Advents, different things. And some of them have one, some of them have four, some of them have more, and and it's every day. And I haven't seen one yet that appeals to me, and I know they appeal to a lot of people. That's fine, but I just don't understand it. And it's just putting me in mind of, especially the ones where they have more than one that they're doing. This is a season of excess sometimes, and I'm just not in that stage right now of excess and overindulgence. And because it's Friday, Frugal Friday, we will talk about just a little bit. It's something actually that I read long ago in the Tightwad Gazette book, or it was in the newsletter when it came out, in the 90s. Amy Decision, and she talks about the Christmas fulfillment drama. And she actually takes a good part of this essay that she wrote from this book called Your Money or Your Life by Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin. And I have this book, but I picked it up at a used bookstore when I found it because Amy recommended it. I have not read this one completely through because it's a bit drier than Amy's book. It's definitely got good information in it, and I really maybe should take another whack at it, but doesn't that look like an exciting table? It doesn't. And part of that's the format of the book itself. There's a lot of stuff like that in here. Good information, I'm sure, but just a bit, I don't want to say stodgy, but less conversational maybe than Amy, and her cute little graphics to illustrate the same idea, that yes, the more presents you have, the less happiness there is, or the less fulfillment. But she does go through that and talk about how it's Christmas morning and the child opens up a present and another, two presents, and he wants to play with them, but the parents won't let him because there's more to do. You got to do all of it. And so he keeps going, and then he starts to get greedy, like, well, what else? And then there's more and more, and then he gets kind kind of mean about it. It's like, well, I didn't want that, you know. And if they would have stopped in the beginning with just the two things that he was really excited about, it would have been great. But it just sort of spiraled out of control into, you know, being unfulfilled. And it's like when we binge eat or binge drink or, you know, do anything to excess. We peak and we fall really fast. So I see that, I think, in some of these Vlogmas podcasts that have been on. And I hope that's not what's happening. I hope they are happy and fulfilled with what they're doing, but I just don't get it. I'm not there. So I'm trying to find other things to watch. There's, you know, Christmas movies, there's all kinds of things. But anyway, if the holidays are hard for you, maybe read in here a little bit, because there's good information in here on how to handle the excess and avoid the excess. And then I'll link to this. So that's something. But now, what I'm reading for the holidays, I do have some recommendations there. I read this many years ago, Fannie Flagg, A Redbird Christmas. And I found the audiobook version at a thrift store a few years ago, and I bought it, and I haven't listened to it. So I'm going to listen to the audiobook version while I'm knitting. And that will be delightful, because this is just a charming story. Starts in Chicago, goes down to Mississippi. Really makes me want to go visit Mississippi. I believe it was Mississippi, not Alabama. Anyway, it was just very good. And I lent it to a friend who just gulped it down. It's not a long, difficult read. It's short. And she enjoyed it a lot. So I'll listen to that on audiobook. The other thing I got this last year. Oh, it's hard to see what that says, but it says Dickens, 5 Christmas Novels. And it's a beautiful slipcased book. I got this last year at Christmas time in a lot. I bought a book lot off of eBay, and I could request, the guy messaged me and he said, well, what kind of books do you want? He was just putting, you know, like 10 together for X number of dollars. It was a hodgepodge. And I said, well, I like the classics, you know, literature, novels and such. So this was one of the books that I got in my lot, and it was a gem. You know, I was really happy to get it. So, and almost all the books in the lot were books I didn't have, and books that were very interesting and in very good condition. So I was pleased to get that. So I got the 5 Christmas novels, Charles Dickens, and of course I love A Christmas Carol. I like the Alistair Sim version, I like the Reginald Owen version, and I like the Patrick Stewart version, which I don't see very often. So I do like them, but I've never actually read the story, the text. So I'm doing that now and enjoying it very much. And I've heard of Cricket on the Hearth. I have not heard or read of you know, any of these. So that's my Christmas reading, holiday reading for the year. To end the year is Dickens. We'll see how far I get. I'm not going too fast right now, so if I only do one, well, then I've got this for 5 more years, or 4 more years to get through. And the last thing I'll recommend for holiday time is, I will put a link to it in the show notes, Dylan Thomas reading his poem, his essay, A Child's Christmas in Wales. I listen to that every Christmas. I think it's delightful. To hear him reading it in his own voice is extra special. Yeah, it is the holidays. It just sums it all up, and it's charming and mindful and just a good thing to listen to. So very entertaining. So that is it for me. I will do one more podcast before the end of the year, probably, in between Christmas and New Year's sometime. We'll see how it falls, and just sort of do a wrap up of the year. And hopefully I'll have something else finished by then to talk about. We'll see. I still have more things to pull out that are, past projects, but it's always nice to get something new done, and I am that sort of a rush challenge to see what I can finish by the end of the year. So that's it. I hope you have a lovely holiday season, whatever you're doing. I hope you're staying warm if you're in a chilly spot. If you're in a warm spot, lucky you. I love the winter, but I don't like being frozen cold. So yesterday it was only single digits. It started out below zero. I didn't go outside. I didn't even go out the door. I opened the door. The cats didn't even want to go outside. So we just stayed in the house and stayed cozy, which is a good thing to do. So, yes, enjoy your holidays, whatever they may be, or just the day in general. And if you're watching this, it's Friday the 13th. I hope you're being lucky and safe, and don't tempt fate. Maybe just do something quiet, like knitting and reading and watching podcasts or videos or good old movies, and enjoy. And share some happiness, and you will find it. Wow. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.